Hey, Arman here. Welcome to the NSP Nutrition Show, where we cover training, nutrition, supplementation strategies, and a whole lot more. So stand by. Hey, and welcome to the NSP Show. I'm Arman Eckelbarger.
And I'm Frank Mills, and Armin and I are back this week again. Episode 20, Armin. Holy smokes. Things are flying along here. But Armin and I, we're going to be talking about understanding leg training and its challenges. We've all been there. And also high carb versus low carb diets, and is there a better way? So we got a lot of information for you today. Armin, beautiful little nippy day here in Tampa Bay, but things are going good and excited to do this show. Now, everybody is at issues with leg training. It's not something we all look forward to. Well, maybe look forward to, but we know that it's definitely challenging. So let's start from the beginning. What are some of the things to know about training your legs?
Okay, so there's a lot to actually know. So we're probably just going to put a small dent in today's conversation, but
Right,
I do
right.
think it's going to give some guys some good takeaways. The reason I say that because, in my opinion, I'm a hard gainer when it comes to developing legs, so I've had to really think outside the box, try different things, and I've gotten some things that work that thank God they work because it can be very frustrating. So maybe we can solve some of that frustration. But
Hmm.
like some of the basics, you have certain compound exercises. You have to be able to do those to develop the entire part of the leg. Uh, Other things when it comes to legs is I've found through what I've done and also listen to other, guys that've got good leg development is I prefer higher reps for legs. Now,
Hmm.
one of the reasons for that is because where your heart is located, and because where the legs are located, you've got to push a lot of blood into that muscle to expand the capillaries and to expand the muscle. And so I feel like going heavy as possible with higher reps has been a real good plus for how it's worked for me. So that's one thing. Another thing that I see, and we're going to talk about this a lot, is people when they do leg work, they tend to pause and rest in between each repetition, which number one lets the legs rest. Number two, uh, you're going to put wear and tear on your knee joints by doing that.
Hmm.
I see people lock their legs a lot, and that's not beneficial at all. So,
Right.
certain things you need to know about that. But you do need to use maximum weight to really force that muscle to expand. Need to use higher intensity training principles. And then the other thing for me to get the best results is not train too long. So I really focused on trying to keep it under 45 minutes for my leg training sessions, but I'm trying to max out the 45 minutes.
So I'm sure a lot of people are kind of curious, as I am. What type of exercises do you prefer, Armin?
Well, like anything else, it's going to depend on the equipment that you have to work with.
Hmm.
Because I've been in environments where I've had very minimal equipment, like during the pandemic, I was training in a neighbor's garage, and all I had was a squat rack. So I had to get kind of creative with that and doing heavy squats, and there was no air conditioning. It was pretty challenging, but
Right.
that's just one method you can use. So depending on the equipment you have to work with, squats are going to be good. Now there's different debates on Vince about how you view squatting, but if you don't have any other alternative, then it's a best alternative. So you can do back squats, you can do front squats. Now I do really do like the leg press equipment. Now there are some crappy leg presses, but most of them
Hmm.
are pretty well made, and it does help protect your back. So I really enjoy using those machines. Hack squats are great as long as you get, and again, there's some crappy ones of those. So if you find one that fits you really well, there's a great piece of equipment because it allows you to get a good stretch in the quadriceps. And one of Vince's main ones is sissy squats. Sissy squats, I've used those the past few years extensively, and I think that really helped my leg development. And
Hmm.
you feel it, and you feel it a lot. So I think that's a really good exercise. Make sure you incorporate that. And then you have even squat machines where you get into the machine and you have a release switch there. You can move up and down. And again, these are different things to help protect your back, your lower back, but I would still wear a belt. And then other things that work the top of the thighs is lunges. Then to work the back of your thighs, the hamstrings, it'd be leg curls, stiff leg deadlifts. And then my favorite one is calf raises. I do those all the time. Wouldn't really say it's my favorite, but that's one you have
Mm-hmm.
to incorporate as well. So there's different movements you can do from that, standing calf raises, donkey calf raises, and seated calf raises, etc. So I like to use all those exercises. I just like to use them in different combinations.
So, Armin, do you train all of your leg parts during each of your training sessions?
Over the years, that's what I typically did.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but I got to say, the last 2 years, I decided to split it up. And when I
Okay.
did that, I felt like I got much better results. So when I say split it up, what I end up doing now is I like to train my quads and my calves. So I'm focusing strictly on the top of the legs, and then I work the calves after. Now, I'm still going to get some hamstring development from the
Mm-hmm.
quad movements I'm doing, but then, 3 or 4 days later, typically it's like 3 days later, then I'm going to
Uh-huh.
train my hamstrings to really isolate and focus on the hamstring muscle so I can use heavier weight and be fresher on my attack to the muscle. And then I do calves again. I'm constantly playing with my calf training to do different things to stimulate, as much development as I can. It's I try a lot of things, but I get the results are still a challenge. But
Right,
I like to
right.
split them up at this point, and I think if you're struggling with your leg development, that's a good way to go because what you'll see have happen is your leg strength will also improve as long as you're getting the right amount of recovery. So that's the other part to that.
Okay. Well, I'm sure a lot of people are curious. What are some of the leg routine ideas that you use yourself?
So when each leg workout, I like to do a warm up with a compound exercise. I want to warm up the entire area so that way it affects
Mm-hmm.
the hamstrings and it can stretch the calves and things like that. So I like to either start if I'm going to do a squat machine because I have one in the place I train at now. I'll use that, which gives me a good stretch on the top of the legs, and focus on that and work
Mm-hmm.
up to, I'm going to warm up with different warm up sets. So if I do that or I do the leg press, they're both the same for me. So what I'm doing is I like to start out with 20 reps to warm up with a fairly light weight, maybe 90 pounds. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'll add more weight and then go to 15 reps and then add more weight, go to 10 reps. And I'm working my way up to the maximum weight that I want to use if I'm going to go heavy that day. So
Okay.
whether it's being the leg press or squat machine or squats, that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to hit 2 to 3 sets with all out effort if I'm going to go heavy with the quad. And then this will be a quad focus on this leg training day.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll do that. And then after I get done with that, then I'll go do some isolation exercises to help further fatigue the quads and to stretch them. So one of the things I really like to do is like to superset leg extensions with a slow tempo, and then go
Mm-hmm.
right to sissy squats because you're not using any weight with a sissy squat. And when I superset those, it's an incredible burn. It's an incredible pump, and it don't 2 or 3 rounds of that, and I'm pretty well shot. So
Okay.
that's a really good combo that I like to do. The other thing that you want to keep in mind is for guys that want to combine exercises, like the reason I'm supersetting the leg extension, the sissy squat, is for
Mm-hmm.
breathing. But if you
Okay.
want to increase the intensity, a good way to do things is if you go from a leg extension where you're not getting a lot of heavy breathing, but then go right to a compound exercise like a squat or a leg press or a hack squat,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to need heavy breathing. So that's how you can get more work done and more intensity and keep your oxygen level so that you can breathe. Because like, for example, if you're doing drop sets on a leg press or other machine,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get out of breath pretty quickly. And even though you're dropping the weight down, you're losing so much oxygen that you're not going to have much strength. I found that those are pretty difficult for me to get good benefit from. So I prefer to not do drop sets as much as a higher intensity way on the like a heavy leg press or something like that, where it's really safe to do it. But keep in mind that if you do want to do those, your oxygen level is going to drop down, and it's going to be very hard to catch your breath enough so you can
Mm-hmm.
have enough oxygen to do the repetitions. So just a couple of quick examples there.
Gotcha, gotcha. I'm sure a lot of the folks out there, there are folks out there that like to manage their heart rate. So, is there any information you can offer with that, and maybe on how you combine exercises and how that would work?
So like for the heart rate part of it, when you're training legs, you're training with heavy weight, your heart
Hmm.
rate's going to get jacked. I mean, it's going to come up pretty high, especially if you're working hard and you're pushing yourself. So you've got to allow that to come back down. So that's when I use Vince's hyperventilating techniques where I bend over and take large breaths through my mouth and then exhale through the nose. I think that's very good to help recuperate the oxygen level and very
Hmm.
helpful. So that's one of the techniques I use. Or sometimes I've been experimenting with using these little oxygen tanks, because pro athletes use these when they're like in football and stuff. They take
Right.
oxygen, which again restores your levels. And I've been playing with that. That does help too. So
Hmm.
that's another
Okay.
strategy. And then when it comes to combining exercises, again, you just have to understand how it's going to affect your oxygen level. 'Cause sometimes I'll superset a hack squat with a leg press. Now I'll be out of breath, but at the same time, I'm going to be going heavier on the leg press than I would be on a hack squat. So I'm in a safe position to squeeze out several reps, but it won't be, a lot of reps that you would typically think you would get. So just kind of keep that in mind.
Ah, that's some really good information. I guess one thing that, you know, I'm kind of curious about, I'm sure some folks are too, is depending on the exercise you're doing, your foot positioning. Do you do anything different, with how you position your feet for each exercise?
Yeah, over the years, there's been, you're going to get debates from different, you know, experts, so to speak, that
Right,
it
right.
doesn't, that it doesn't matter. Okay. But
Okay.
I disagree. I've done them because I've done them in different ways. And
Hmm.
I firmly believe that, doing a wide stance will get a lot of the inside of the thigh and the outside of the thigh, but it's
Hmm.
going to get overall leg development with a wider stance. And when I say wide stance, we're talking about past, just slightly past shoulder width. And again, everybody's different on their movements, and so some people are really balanced with a wide stance, and some people may not be so balanced. So you have to kind of play with that. But I like to do wide stance movements. Then I like to do V stance, where the feet are positioned like a V. Again, it can be wide or it can be narrow. But I found that affects the teardrop muscle and the inner thigh really well.
Hmm.
It still gets still gets the leg, but you'll feel it more there. And so I like to always incorporate some sets of that with every leg training I'm doing. And then I like to do narrow stance where the feet are close together. And Vince was a big proponent of this. And because it tends to get the outside sweep. And I've seen my legs develop more from focusing on that too. So I like to
Hmm.
incorporate that foot position with all of my different movements. Now I don't do with every single exercise. I may just pick one particular exercise I'm going to change these foot positions with, and
Right,
I'm trying
right.
to feel the muscle. I'm trying to engage it to understand how it's helping me. Now, on top of the foot position, another thing I feel is very beneficial is to do like a sissy squat or other movements with your heels raised up, like on a 2x4 or a step or small platform. Because
Hmm.
when you raise the heels up, you tend to get a better stretch on the quads. Now, some people are going to say that's bad for the knees. Well, I would say this: I've never had a knee problem from that. Now, you do want to proceed with caution as you do that,
Hmm.
and you don't want to start with heavy weight. You have to develop
Right.
the technique, but I found that it's very beneficial to help develop my quads much more effectively. So I
Hmm.
highly recommend that. But again, and if you want to start with zero weight and then work on the technique, and then you'll find where it's going to get easier. Then you can add weight. And I think it's a really effective way.
Well, we're talking about the feet, and that leads me to shoes. There are a
Okay.
ton of shoes out there, and we've gotten really crazy over the last 20 years in shoe development for all different types of athletics, weight training, running, cross training, whatever. Do you have any specific opinions about what kind of shoes that you should train your legs with?
Yeah, so again, over the years, I've met a lot of different people that had good leg development. I always ask kind of what they preferred, and I
Hmm.
also had an opportunity where I was working for Gold's Gym, and Tom Platts come in and did a seminar. and he trained legs, and he has very specific shoes for it. And I just kind of, after watching what he did, kind of adhered
Mm-hmm.
to that. So I prefer to use a powerlifting shoe, which has a very firm raised heel to do my leg training with. I feel that
Okay.
it gives me good stability. Also, you need to make sure the shoe is a solid fit so your feet do not slide in the shoe. That's
Right.
something to keep in mind. So it's a high quality shoe. They're typically $100 or more, but they last for a long time because you only use them for when you're doing squats or other leg work. So I prefer that type of shoe. Adidas is the kind that works well for me. So I buy that powerlifting shoe, and there's different variations of that,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all very effective. And I found that to me, I like them. Now, when it comes to training my calves, though, I pop those shoes off and I use a running shoe or a cross training shoe because it's more flexible to get a better stretch in
Mm-hmm.
my calf. Now, obviously, you can do calf work barefoot, but most of the gyms are not going to allow you to do that. So you want a kind of a thin shoe that's very flexible to train your calves with. So that's what I like to do for that.
Interesting. Okay. A lot of good information there, Armin. Let's get into the workouts themselves. When it comes to sets, how many do you find yourself doing uh, on each workout that you do?
I typically target 15 to 20 sets for my legs. Now again, I'm doing quads and calves. So when I do my hamstrings, I'll probably do 15 to 12 to 15 sets. But
Mm-hmm.
as what we're talking about today, most leg training, I would probably keep to 15 to 20 sets simply because that'll take about 45 minutes. So
Mm-hmm.
I just think once you start going over 45 minutes, you're getting diminishing returns and you're starting to affect your recovery. So
Right. Right.
with doing 15 to 20, that keeps me in that timeline.
Okay. Now, what about the rest in between sets or exercises? I've heard you mention certain time frames before. Is it the same with the legs?
I feel like after training for a long time, that the faster the pace, the more intensity you're going to have, and
Mm-hmm.
the better. Now, obviously, you're going to give up a little bit of strength if you're going at a fast pace. So, if you're doing some maximum weight and you want to kind of test the waters to see how you're doing, then
Mm-hmm.
obviously take some longer rest periods. But you got to keep the blood flowing into the legs. So, taking long rest periods, I do not believe are beneficial, and I believe Vince felt the same way. So, keeping that 15, 30, 45-second rest periods to keep that stress going. And it's going to challenge the muscles to really have to adapt to it. I think it's very effective. I don't think long rest periods are good. So, and some people may get good results with that. And if that's the case, then that's great. But most people I see that struggle with legs, they're taking way too much rest. You've got to keep the pressure on. You've got to keep the blood flow in that muscle to help expand it. So that's why I believe in short rest periods. And you got to do a lot of breathing to reload the oxygen. And I think that's very
Mm-hmm.
beneficial.
All right. I know you've talked about one of the most important things is recovery and rest. What about recovery? How much rest do you take before you train your legs each individual time? Is it weekly? Is it every 2, 3 days? How do you do
Well,
it?
normally it would be, once a week with the way I
Mm-hmm.
used to do it, sometimes twice a week, doing, again, getting as much rest as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But my current schedule is like I'll do legs on the beginning of the week. So I'll do quads and calves. And then the next day I'll do chest and triceps. And then I'll take a day off. Then the next day I'll do back. So that's 4 days, three total rest days. Because after I do my back training, the next day I'm going to do hamstrings and calves. So typically there's about a 3 to 4 day break in between. If I'm more tired, I'll take an extra day off. But
Right,
three to
right.
4 days between the quad workout and the hamstring workout. Now, if I'm just doing legs entirely, then I'd probably target, every 4 to 5 days to work my legs back in there again,
Right.
uh, from, because I feel like I'm recovered enough to handle the resistance. So you got to
Mm-hmm.
watch your recovery, and that's how I kind of do it right now.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, what are some other things to keep in mind when it comes to leg training? Because I'm sure with all that you've done, you have a little bit more info for us.
Well, first and foremost, leg training is very demanding, and you need to have a good mindset, and you need to have a good mental game. And if you go in dreading your leg workout, you're starting out with two strikes. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
you've got to get this mental game like, okay, it's leg day, and you've got to just get yourself psyched up. And then you see all these different memes and other comments people make about it's leg day, because
Mm-hmm.
leg days are tough, okay, but it's one of the best things to help your exercise regimen. It helps stimulate growth hormone. It helps with testosterone. It's got a lot of benefits, and you don't want to be the guy walking around the beach with chicken legs. Okay, you just don't want to be that guy. So I don't want to be that guy, and I don't want any of my clients to be that guy. So you've got to have mental toughness and be consistent with leg training. You can't just, if you're not in the mood, whatever. Okay, is it you're not in the mood, or do you need a little more rest and recovery, and then ready to go? So
Right,
you want
right.
to keep things fresh with your leg workout. So keep changing things up to challenge yourself. Track what you're doing to see how you're improving. You track, each exercise, how many reps you did, what weight you're using, so you can get some feedback. A lot of people they put it all right here. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to be as accurate as having the actual stuff written down and something you can relate to, or use an app where you can have it listed. So
Right.
I really made my best gains by tracking everything I'm doing, because then I can say, okay, I'm not really getting any stronger here. What's going on? So you can catch things early. Uh, Obviously, do not take so much rest in between reps. Coming up and pausing, and then doing a rep and pausing. So one strategy I've used that works really well is I'll focus on trying to get 10 reps nonstop, just really pushing myself. So the blood's really starting to flow into the legs. I'm getting out of oxygen. I'm getting really fatigued. Things are starting to get, a little nervous. So
Mm-hmm.
then I'll pause and take some breaths in, deep breaths. So I'll do like 10 reps, all I got. I'll pause, get some air. Then I'll try to squeeze out 5 more reps if I can. And then I'll pause and rest. And then I'll try to squeeze out 3 more reps if I can. Then I'll pause and rest and try to squeeze out 2. And next thing you know, I got 20 reps in.
Mm-hmm.
But I did it still keeping the tension on the muscles and really pushing myself. And I learned this from Ron Love, who's a professional bodybuilder. He taught that to me long time ago. And I've been using that ever since. And I feel it's very effective to really see how much you can really squeeze out of a set. So that's one thing I like to do. But again, don't pause in between. Keep moving the legs, keep pushing the blood in, and doing that to really work the legs. Again, analyze your progress. Make sure that you're getting stronger. You'll be able to get more reps, and then check your progress in the mirror or do a tape measure. Tape the quads. Find a consistent place to tape it every time, and tape it, and then see how you're progressing. Because if you're not progressing, then you got to make some changes. So, leg training is tough, but you can get the results. But you have to eat the food, get to sleep, and then you got to put the really hard work in if you want to have a nice set of quads that you can feel good about when you're walking around.
A lot of great information on leg training. Armin and I were going to take a quick break. So stand by for a quick word from NSP Nutrition, and Armin and I will be right back.
Hey, and welcome back to the NSP Nutrition Show. I'm Arman Eckelbarger.
And I'm Frank Mills, and we are going to get to a topic that we promised at the earliest part of the show: high carb versus low carb diets. And is there a better way? So we're going to talk about this. Okay, so Armin, let's just start about explaining the difference between high carb and low carb.
All right, so when you have a high carb, we'll start with high carb. It's going to basically be high carb, low fat, and you have your
Mm-hmm.
protein in with that. So the focus is to eat clean carbs of all types. So clean carbs basically mean not processed. And then you want to minimize fat because your main energy source is going to be the carbohydrates, which convert to energy pretty quickly. And that's one of the advantages of carbohydrates in general.
Mm-hmm.
So a typical high carb, low fat diet will be 50% carbohydrates generally. Again, there's varying numbers there. 30% protein and then 20% or less of fat at all.
Okay.
So that's how that works. Now, the next one is high fat, low carb. And so what we're focused on here is having fat as our main energy source, and there's different
Hmm.
benefits to that. So generally you're looking at 45 to 65%, depending on what plan you're following, of
Okay.
fat as part of your diet, and then 25 to 35% of protein, and
Okay.
then minimal carbohydrates, say 5 to 15% are some different estimates that you'll see regarding high fat, low carb type diets.
Interesting. And so I got to be curious here, Armin. Have you done either or both?
Oh yeah, I've done them both.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
and they both work. Bottom line,
Okay. Okay.
there's just different things to understand when it comes to doing these diets, and then you want to look at the long-term effects of this type of strategy too, because a lot of people really, I don't think they understand. Because I'm 58, so I've been doing this a while.
Hmm.
There's things you want to be aware of for the long game.
Okay. So I'm just kind of curious. Let's go back to high carb diets. Are there things to keep in mind when you're doing a high carb diet?
So from my experience, I've followed, in the magazines and all the other periodicals, and they're still available today. I mean, there's plenty of people that
Hmm.
are doing them, and a lot of your pros are all big on carbohydrates only as your main energy source. But to do that, you're really going to need to eat about 5, 6, 7 meals a day, and that's one of the problems I didn't like about it. So
Right.
because your carbohydrates are only going to last typically 1 to 2 hours, and then you're going to need another refill of energy. And some of the reasons for that, though, too, is your insulin's elevated. So the insulin, as you start to run low on glucose and energy, it's going to say,
Hmm.
"Hey, we need to get some more." So you're going to have that constant use of insulin having to process your carbohydrates.
Hmm.
So one of the things that I think we're starting to see now is a better understanding that long-term high carbohydrate diets can lead to insulin resistance because you're just using insulin so much. Now, there can be debates on this and that whether that's true or not true, et cetera. But if you look at a lot of the pro bodybuilders and the longevity that do the high carb diets, they're having a lot of problems with this because
Hmm.
insulin resistance leads to heart disease and other problems. So that's one of the things that I think people need to have a better understanding with if they're going to do a high carb diet. So you have to eat more often. It can be more challenging. You got to prepare your meals ahead of time.
Hmm.
It does work. So it does work. It gives you good energy. You have good strength. It's a good way for athletes. I think if you're lean and you're doing athletic events, you're going to need a constant flow of energy. So that's a good way to go too. It could be really helpful there if you're already lean. So.
Okay. Again, a lot of good info on um, high carb. What about low carb? Are there some things to keep in mind as well for a low carb diet?
Excuse me. Well, yes. So low carb is very effective. Okay, and so when you're doing this, you're having very minimal carbohydrates, so you're gonna
Hmm.
burn a lot of body fat. Also, the thing is, when you're eating protein and fat as your main source of energy, fats last 4 to 6 hours. So the one nice thing I like about that particular program is you don't have to eat as much. 3 meals a day uh, works really well for me. And then I would just supplement with a protein drink. So, and you can have maybe 4 meals a day if you're, bigger guy than me, that kind of thing.
Right.
But
Right.
you don't need to eat as often because the energy is going to be burned from the fat, and fat also spares muscle. That's one of the negatives with the high carbohydrate diet. If you don't get your meal in as needed, sometimes you can find yourself actually burning muscle tissue to compensate for having some glucose. So that was
Hmm.
one of the things that I felt affected me, especially with having a high metabolism. So
Absolutely.
I
Okay.
think if you're a lean person, or you have a high metabolism, a higher protein, higher fat diet can be a better fit. And again,
Hmm.
3 to 4 meals would be a good fit for that.
Okay. Well, since you've done them both, which do you prefer?
Well, I actually prefer a totally different program.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and the reason I'm saying this is because I've done both of them, and they're both, I don't feel, long-term sustainable strategies for optimal health. Now, again, this
Okay.
is my opinion, but this is what I do for myself, and this is what I do for my clients. So I prefer a process called carb cycling. So let me kind of give you an explanation of that. Carb cycling is where you eat low carb throughout the main part of the day. Then
Okay.
in the evening, the night before you're going to do a training session, you would carbohydrate load or have some carbohydrates in the evening to reload the muscles in the liver for the next day of training. So that's what carb cycling in a real simple format can be.
Okay.
Now, the reason I like that is because it allows me to burn fat throughout the day. And then in the evening, to reload the muscles in the liver, I'll have some carbohydrates and then I'll have good energy the next day. Because when I
Mm-hmm.
have the carbohydrates in the evening, you're going to have some insulin come up and it's going to help push the nutrients into the cells and it's going to drop right back down. So when you go to sleep, your fat burning process is going to kick in. You don't have insulin floating around. So you get a better hormonal response and I think a better sleep because when you have carbohydrates in the evening, you get more serotonin, which converts to melatonin and causes you to sleep better. So I think it's a more beneficial strategy for long term, and it gives you good energy and good strength, and that's what I found it worked well for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, I don't think the low carb and high carb strategies are good long term, um,
Mm-hmm.
just from my personal experience.
Okay. So is the better way then the carb cycling program? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and in my opinion, I feel like you're not gonna eliminate certain foods. Like when you
Mm-hmm.
do low carb, you're gonna act or low carb, you're gonna eliminate certain foods because you only want so many carbohydrates, period. And that's not good for your gut microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that with doing carb cycling, you can get the other foods that you like to have or that you should be having, but you're just using them more strategically. And
Mm-hmm.
you're using insulin less often. So you keep your insulin sensitivity higher. And
Okay.
having high insulin sensitivity is good because that allows you to absorb your nutrients more effectively and it gets its job done better. And you're less likely to suffer from insulin resistance over time. So that's the thing, because diabetes runs in my family and I don't want to get it. And so that's
Right.
what's really important on my radar. And for other people that if they're important on your radar, you need to, and it runs in the family, you need to keep a close eye on that because it doesn't take much for that to start to happen. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
working with a lot of clients right now that have these problems. So, and the other thing is with, having the fats like I do with the proteins, it helps the hormones stay more stable because hormones need fats to do their work. So
Mm-hmm.
taking a lot of fat out of your diet isn't good for your hormones because that's what they need. Now, your body does produce cholesterol itself, but at the same time, won't we just make it just as easy just by having some good quality fats to make it easier? So that's my viewpoint on it. I think that if people look at that strategy, they're going to have a much better effect from it than trying to do something that's, over time not going to be um, ideal with their health because you're
Mm-hmm.
limiting. I mean, it's like this with the steak and egg diet. It's a great diet. We've talked about this. Okay, it is. Vince never designed or never intended for that diet to be from now on. You're going to have steak and eggs because you're eliminating certain foods.
Right.
But
Right.
it is extremely effective for losing body fat. It is. It's very effective, but it's not a long term strategy. You're gonna start having problems from it. So you
Mm-hmm.
use that to get yourself lean, but then you readjust your diet so you get the carbohydrates as needed, so they work for you and not
Mm-hmm.
against you by adding more body fat.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So I guess I should assume that carb cycling is what you prefer long term for sure, right? This is the way to go.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. So why don't you explain how you use carb cycling, Armin? Because I'm sure a lot of people are interested in how your week goes with carb cycling and how it works for you.
Yeah, so like I keep it simple, and you can do it a lot of different ways. But like when I get up, if I'm going to have breakfast, if I'm not going to fast, I'm going to have 6 whole eggs. And I may put some cheese in that. I may put some mushrooms in it, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and make an omelet. But that's going to be my first meal, so that'll last me. It's 36 grams of protein minimum, because there's 6 grams of protein per egg times six. And I got good fats in there. I got the egg yolks, which has choline, inositol, lecithin, biotin, all these great properties, and the fat. So that's going to last me, for several hours. Then around 1 o'clock or so, I'll have some lunch. So that'll be, probably half a pound of hamburger, maybe a little bit less, maybe a third, depending on how hungry I am. I'll
Mm-hmm.
have that. I'll cook that kind of rare and season that, and then I may add some cottage cheese, and then some spinach salad, and then I may finish that up with some mixed nuts. So
Mm-hmm.
again, protein and fat, just a few carbohydrates in there, a little bit of fiber from the spinach, and then for dinner, it could be I typically go with a lower fat meat, so I'll do chicken or turkey or something like that, or a really lean steak. And I'll have a salad or some vegetables like the cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, and I'll put grass-fed butter on them to enjoy them. And then if I have some additional carbohydrates, I'll have some high glycemic carbohydrates after that. So that could be, depending, I may have some pasta, it could be some
Mm-hmm.
rice, or I may just do a baked potato, regular white potato because it's higher glycemic,
Mm-hmm.
and just put some butter or sour cream on it. If I'm going to do some extra carbohydrates, or I may just have some homemade cookies or uh, you know some other treat like some berry cobbler or something like that,
Right. Right.
depending on the mood I'm in for that day. But you get variety that way. So then I may just do a bunch of different types of vegetables. It could be corn, peas, mashed potatoes, and things like that for the evening meal. But then I'll have those carbohydrates should be there to help give me the insulin spike and then push the nutrients into cells. Good night's sleep. The only thing I may do is supplement with a protein drink after training, as maybe a fourth meal for me. So that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the carb cycling, the way I would do it on a daily basis. Again, you just kind of mix up your foods accordingly based on what you like to eat. But then say one night you want to have some pizza. Well, then you can do that, because you're going to carb reload, and you can. But I don't like having. To me, I don't like having a lot of cheese later in the evening. But that's just me. But if you're going to have pizza,
Mm-hmm.
then you would do it that way, as another example.
Gotcha.
But I don't. I just don't advocate processed food as part of your carb reload. Okay.
Mm-hmm. A- Absolutely. There, no processed food. You know, the one thing about the carb cycling, there's a ton of diets out there. There's a ton of programs out there,
Yeah.
and it's stuff that you and I have talked about before. But the thing about the carb cycling to me that intrigues me, and it works, okay, is you learn to understand what you're intaking, what it does, how it
Yeah.
affects your body. So you know that, hey, I can enjoy this. Yeah, this isn't like I can have some carrot cake today. It's not something that you're saying no to. You just understand to meet your goals. You understand what these things do to your body. So you don't really limit yourself. You control and you can enjoy basically almost anything you want except for processed food.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of processed food, but I
Right,
mean,
right,
you can definitely have some treats. I mean,
right.
it's not that you can't have treats. So, but just use them more strategically because you got to watch your insulin levels. That's the thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Armin, a lot of great information as usual, man. I'm sure everybody's going to enjoy this show. We appreciate you. I'm sure the audience appreciates all the information, all the hard work that you bring to them every week.
No problem. It's always a pleasure, and hopefully we can got everybody got some takeaways from this, and that'll help them with their own program. And again, let us know other things you feel would be beneficial, or questions you have about what we're doing.
Absolutely. We it's not something we rely on, but we look forward to and are asking you to contribute.
Hmm.
If you have any type of any comments or any topics you'd like us to cover, you can leave those comments on the YouTube channel in the comments section, or you can email NSP Nutrition directly and we'll get it. You can email them at support@nspnutrition.com. And, you know, a lot of that information, Arman, we use in the show, or you actually go onto YouTube and you'll respond to their questions and comments, right?
Yeah. Yep. As much as I can. Yeah.
Yeah. So we appreciate you. Don't forget to check out nspnutrition.com. We've got a lot of new products on the website, new gloves, bags, all kinds of good stuff. So go on NSP and check it out, and hopefully we'll help you achieve your fitness goals and workout goals. But Arman and I appreciate your support, and thanks for joining us today, and check back next week for another new episode of the NSP Nutrition Show.